By way of introducing our guest tonight, I want to repeat a story attributed to the actor Jack Lemmon. A young man once asked Lemmon, "What is it like to act on stage?" Lemmon replied, "Okay, picture yourself walking to the middle of a stage in front of 2,000 people under very bright lights. Now take off all your clothes. Now, very slowly, make a 360-degree turn. That's what it's like to act on stage." That's in a drama, mind you. Double that vulnerability and anxiety to play comedy and square that for musical comedy. And here's the real catch. If you do it right, you make it all look easy. Our two actor guests this evening, Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick, have braved the stage successfully in all three contexts. And helping to give them cover in the current revival of Neil Simon's The Odd Couple is our third guest, Joe Mantello. Nathan Lane has been described as part bulldog, part choir boy, and he's won 2 Tonys for A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum and The Producers. But his range is staggering, bringing to his roles that rare ability to be both hilarious and moving, as he was as Buzz in Joe Mantello's production of Terrence McNally's Love, Valor, Compassion. He previously starred as a Caesar-like star in Neil Simon's Laughter on the 23rd Floor and Stanley in the national company of Neil Simon's Broadway Bound. This December, he will reprise his role as Max Bialystock in the Susan Stroman film version of The Producers, the Broadway musical which struck lightning by pairing Lane with Matthew Broderick, who will also be reprising his role of Leo Bloom in the movie. Matthew's long and eclectic career has been equally acclaimed and even more closely aligned to Simon's work. After breaking through in Harvey Fierstein's Torch Song trilogy, he starred in the movie of Simon's Max Duggan Returns around the same time he was cast in the playwright's autobiographical Brighton Beach Memoirs, for which he won his first Tony. He again played Eugene Jerome in both the stage and film versions of Biloxi Blues, and then won another Tony Award for his starring role in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Joe Mantello is on a very short list of directors who are as adept at drama as they are at musicals and comedies. Joe has been most frequently compared to Mike Nichols, who was the original director of The Odd Couple, and who, like Joe, does not have a signature style apart from a very high standard of excellence. He's applied that standard most recently to the musical Wicked and the recent revivals of Glengarry, Glen Ross, and Assassins. The latter won him his second Tony Award. His first was for Richard Greenberg's drama, Take Me Out. He's done one other Neil Simon production, Proposals, and his collaboration with Nathan Lane began with the film and theater versions of Love, Valor, Compassion, and include Ms. Lansky-Zielinski. Please welcome Nathan Lane, Matthew Broderick, and Joe Mantello.
I don't know. If you're there.
Before we get started, I want to give a little bit of history on The Odd Couple. The play was inspired by events in the real life of Neil Simon's brother and mentor, the late Danny Simon, who, when he was in the process of a divorce, moved in with the theatrical agent, Roy Gerber. I think he lived with him for 2 years. The play, actually, he lives with him for 3 weeks? Is that it? About a 3-week period. Neil immediately saw the comic potential in the setup and urged his brother Danny to write a play about it. Danny hit a wall and turned the play over to Neil, and the rest is history. 2 curious facts: Neil gave Danny 10% interest in the play, and Jad Klugman said last night on Larry King that 10% turned out to be worth $15 million. Another fact: most people's familiarity with Odd Couple is the TV series starring Klugman and Tony Randall. Simon never had anything to do with the series. In fact, he never made a dime on it. He sold the TV rights to Paramount for $125,000. He fired his business manager. So the first question is...
I'm afraid that's all we have time for.
I'll make the question
Neil's
short.
doing okay. Don't worry about Neil, he's doing all right. You know, we all make mistakes in the beginning, but...
I'll make this question short. Nathan, you referred to The Odd Couple as a classic. And when we hear the word classic, we think of drama, O'Neill, Williams, Miller, or musicals, Kelly.
Well, you do.
Or I do. But this is the first revival in 41 years of this play.
Right.
Apart from a 1985 all-female version.
Right. Rita Moreno and Sally Struthers.
Right.
Yes.
Why do you consider this...
They were very funny, very funny. And they did a hilarious thing. In the replacement of the Pigeon Sisters were two brothers from Venezuela who were airline stewards, played by Louis Stadlin and Tony Shalhoub, who are absolutely hilarious, I must say. Okay, go ahead.
Why do you consider this a classic?
Why do I consider it a classic? Because, well, obviously the longevity of the notion that it was a hit play and then became a television series, and then there have been these incarnations, and it's just become a part of the lexicon and the notion of Felix and Oscar. You know, it's what is nice is to go back to it. I mean, when I was a kid, I don't want to bore you, but when I was a kid, I joined a play of the month club called the Fireside Theater, and the first play they sent me was The Odd Couple, and had these black and white pictures of Walter Matthau and Art Carney, and it, not only was it an introduction to Neil Simon's humor, but it was not an introduction, but it embodied what Broadway was about, and a Broadway comedy, and I don't know, it affected me deeply. And I can remember being in a geography class with a very angry nun, Sister Eva Braun, asking me a question and saying, and I was reading The Odd Couple. I literally I started to laugh because I had gotten to the line, you're listening to this, Martha and Gertrude at the automat, and I started laughing, and she said, what's so funny? And I said, well, it's this import-export thing, it kills me. But it was a moment of it just meant what New York theater and comedy, and certainly Neil was the king of that, and so it was always there in the back of my mind, this play, and there was something about it that also touched me. It's as funny as it is, it's very touching because it is about friendship, and it is about divorce and the pain of divorce. And unlike the television series, which takes it long after they've been divorced, it's about those initial feelings. So. I mean, that's why we wanted to do it. I felt that, and Joe certainly, and Matthew felt that. It was a classic American comedy, and wouldn't it be nice to see it again in a first-class revival?
It was your idea, I think, right? You sort of made this happen?
Well, no. What happened was, we ran into Manny Eisenberg at the Edison Cafe, and he said, well, after the success of the producers, he said, what are you guys going to do next? And we sort of said, sort of half jokingly, The Odd Couple, but it stuck in his mind. And then Neil wrote me a letter and said, about a couple of years later, and said, I really would like you to do it. And so that's how it started.